A day in the life of a medieval scribe monk. Welcome to the Sleepy Traveler, where stories come to life and the past becomes present. Prepare for an immersive journey through the silent corridors of a medieval scriptorium, where every written word was an act of devotion and infinite patience. Hello, Sleepy Traveler. Night has fallen, bringing with it a unique opportunity to delve into a distant time, where knowledge was preserved, letter by letter, where silence was sacred, and each day followed the immutable rhythm of bells and prayers. Before we begin our journey through the centuries, a small request. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our temporal travels. Like this video if you appreciate stories that transport the soul to other times and places. And activate the notification bell so each new journey will reach you like a letter sealed with red wax, patiently waiting to be discovered and read by the flickering candlelight. Now, settle into your modern bed. Take a deep breath, letting the air slowly fill your lungs. Allow the worries of the present day to dissolve like morning mist. Close your eyes and let your mind float back in time, crossing centuries of history until we land together in a Benedictine monastery in 13th century France, where you are not just a distant observer, but the very protagonist of a millennia-old routine that shaped Western civilization. The awakening before dawn, matins, 2:30 a.m. The bronze bell cuts through the dense darkness like a sharp blade, its sound echoing through the monastery's stone galleries. There is no dawn yet. There is no light at all, only deep, impenetrable shadows that seem to have physical substance. Your eyes snap open instantly in the absolute darkness of the monastic cell. The October cold penetrates through the thick limestone walls, seeping into every crack, every mortar joint. You feel the rough, uneven straw mattress beneath your body, the dry stalks poking through the thin fabric that contains them. There is no gentle transition between sleep and wakefulness here, not in this place, not in this life you chose 15 years ago when you took your solemn vows. You rise automatically, muscles responding even before your mind fully awakens. Your bare feet touch the icy stone floor, and a shiver immediately runs up your spine. Your fingers grope in the complete darkness until they find the black wool habit hanging on the iron hook embedded in the damp wall. The fabric is cold and slightly damp to the touch, imbued with the characteristic smell that defines this place, a mixture of myrrh and frankincense, melted beeswax, wet stone, and that indefinable aroma of antiquity that permeates every fiber of the monastery. You pull the heavy tunic over the raw linen shirt you never take off, not even to sleep, the rule so dictates. Then comes the scapula, the strip of fabric that falls over your chest and back, a symbol of Christ's yoke. Finally, the hood is pulled over your head, covering the tonsure on your skull. Every gesture is mechanical, automatic, repeated in exactly the same way thousands of times over a decade and a half. Your fingers find the right knots, make the necessary adjustments, all in complete darkness, all in absolute silence. The hallway is plunged into almost palpable darkness, a gloom so profound it seems to absorb not only light but also sound. Only the olive oil lamps, strategically placed in niches carved into the walls every 10 steps, project flickering, yellowish circles of weak light that barely push back the shadows. You walk in single file with your brothers, all silent, black spectres gliding over the stone. Only the soft, rhythmic sound of feet shuffling on the cold floor and the almost imperceptible rustle of wool habits brushing against each other. No one speaks. The rule of Saint Benedict strictly prohibits unnecessary conversation, and at this sacred hour of the early morning, silence is not just a rule, it is absolute, almost palpable, imbued with spiritual meaning. Idleness is the enemy of the soul. Therefore, at fixed times, the brother should be occupied with manual labor, and at other appointed times with holy reading. Rule of Sainta. Benedict, chapter 48. The Chapel and the Dawn Chants. The monastery chapel gradually reveals itself as you pass through the ogival archway, materializing in the golden, flickering light of dozens of beeswax candles arranged in tall, wrought-iron candelabras. The air here is even colder than in the outer corridor. The stone of the walls and floor seems to emanate a cold of its own, as if alive and breathing ice. You can clearly see your own breath forming small, evanescent clouds before your face each time you exhale. 1 Matins, 2:30 a.m. Nocturnal psalms sung in absolute darkness. Gregorian chant echoes through the vaults for 45 interminable minutes. Male voices intertwined in melodies that rise and fall like waves, without modern harmony, only perfect and ancient unison. 2 Lords, 5 a.m. The first hesitant rays of the sun begin to touch the stained glass windows high in the walls, slowly transforming them into luminous mosaics of cobalt blue, crimson red, and gold. Chants of gratitude for the new day breaking, for the light returning, for divine mercy renewed. The limestone walls rise in imposing vertical lines to Gothic ogival arches that meet at the vaulted ceiling, disappearing into the gloom of the heights where the candlelight does not reach. Magnificent stained glass windows, works of artisans who dedicated years to creating each piece of colored glass, are still invisible in the darkness of the night, but patiently await dawn to project their mosaics of colored light onto the flagstone floor, worn by centuries of devout footsteps. You take your assigned place in the monks' choir, standing with your brethren. There are no benches to sit on, no cushions to kneel. Standing during all hours of prayer, and there are many throughout the day and night, is an integral part of monastic discipline, a deliberate way to keep the body alert and uncomfortable, preventing the mind from wandering or sleep from returning. The prior, a 60-year-old man with a deep, surprisingly resonant voice, begins the chant with the immortal words that open all divine offices. Deus, in adjutorium meum intende, Domine, ad adjuvandum me festina, O God, come to my assistance. O Lord, make haste to help me. Your voice joins the collective choir, merging with the others into a unique and ancient sound texture. There are no harmonies in the sense that modern music would know. All monks sing exactly the same melody in perfect unison, creating a powerful sound wave that seems to come from a single collective organism, a voice composed of many voices. The Latin words flow from your mouth without any conscious effort. You memorize them so many years ago that they emerge automatically, like a second form of breathing, as if your vocal cords had been trained to produce them independently of your active thought. The Gregorian chant resonating through the chapel has a hypnotic and timeless quality. The melodies are modal, not following the major or minor scales that dominate modern Western music. They are ancient Greek modes, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, preserved through centuries by oral tradition and more recently by square notation on parchment. The tones seem to float, suspended in the cold air, without the urgency of a marked rhythm or a defined beat. It is music made to elevate the soul, not to entertain the body. The practice of singing matins in the depth of the night dates back to the first centuries of Christianity, when desert monks in Egypt, men like St. Anthony and St. Pachomius, instituted nocturnal vigils as a form of spiritual combat against demons who they believed were more active in the dark hours. Now, in the 13th century, this tradition continues unchanged, passed down through countless generations of monks. You sing psalms composed over 1,000 years ago by kings and prophets of Israel, preserved through the centuries by scribes like yourself, words that speak of darkness and light, of patient waiting and promised redemption. The frugal breakfast and the silence of the refectory after Lauds, when the first pale lights of dawn finally begin to paint the sky a silvery grey. Through the tall, narrow windows, you and the other monks proceed in silent procession to the refectory for the first meal of the day. It is an austere, rectangular room with a ceiling of oak beams darkened by decades of soot, long, heavy wooden tables worn by generations of use, and simple backless benches lining the tables on both sides. Rye bread dense, dark as wet earth, slightly sour due to slow natural fermentation, baked 3 times a week in the large community stone oven heated by wood. Each monk receives a strictly equal piece, precisely the size of a closed fist, no more, no less. The crust is hard enough to hurt your gums if you're not careful when biting. Weak beer water from wells and rivers is unreliable. It can carry invisible diseases that cause fever and death. The beer, brewed by the monks themselves with barley, grown in the monastery fields, has a very low alcohol content, just enough to make the liquid safe for consumption. It is the standard morning drink, served lukewarm in clay mugs. Oatmeal porridge cooked slowly throughout the previous night in a large copper cauldron hung over warm coals, seasoned only with a minimal touch of sea salt. No sugar, no expensive spices, no luxury. Hot, comforting in its simplicity, but deliberately devoid of intense flavors that could stimulate the senses or awaken carnal appetite. On the whitewashed walls, frescoes faded by time depict scenes from the life of Christ and martyred saints. Saint Sebastian pierced with arrows, Saint Catherine and her torture wheel, Saint Lawrence being roasted alive. The colors are no longer vibrant. Centuries of candle smoke and constant humidity have transformed them into pale pastel tones, ghosts of what they once were. The silence remains absolute and unbroken. Only a single monk is expressly permitted to speak during meals, the one designated by the abbot to conduct the sacred reading that accompanies every communal meal. Today it is Father Anselm, an elderly man of 70 with a sparse white beard and a trembling but surprisingly clear voice. He stands on a raised carved oak pulpit, strategically positioned so his voice reaches every corner of the room. He reads in fluent Latin from a philosophical text by St. Augustine of Hippo, specifically from Book 15 of the Confessions, where the North African bishop meditates deeply on the enigmatic nature of time. Quid est ergo tempus? What then is time? Father Anselm's voice asks rhetorically, echoing words written 800 years ago. Si nemo ex me querat, scio. Si querenti explicare velim, nescio. If no one asks me, I know. If I want to explain to someone who asks, I don't know. You slowly chew the dense, heavy bread, deliberately following the rule's instruction to eat with moderation and contemplation. It has a coarse, irregular texture, with small, hard pieces of crumb that distinctly crunch under your teeth. The taste is earthy, substantial, slightly sour from the natural fermentation of the grains. The weak beer is watery and lukewarm, but efficiently quenches the morning thirst and warms the empty stomach. The oatmeal porridge is almost scalding as you take cautious small sips, feeling the liquid heat descend your throat and chest, spreading through your stomach and warming your entire body from the inside out. There are no whispered conversations, stifled laughs, or even the common clatter of cutlery against plates. Here, you eat with your hands and a single wooden spoon. Only the sound of Father Anselm's voice reading about the paradoxical nature of time that exists only in the present but simultaneously contains memories of the past and expectations of the future. The occasional rustle of habits when someone moves, and the discreet and inevitable collective noise of chewing and swallowing. This rigorous discipline of silence is not oppression, you have discovered over the years. It is, strangely and counterintuitively, liberating. Your mind doesn't have to worry about complex social interactions, about saying exactly the right thing at the right time, about interpreting subtle facial expressions or understanding verbal innuendos. There is only you, the simple and nutritious food before you, and the ancient, profound words of Augustine floating in the cold morning air like incense smoke. The scriptorium, your personal temple of knowledge, sanctuarium literarum. After the morning meal and the brief communal prayer of terce, the third canonical hour of the day, sung around 9 in the morning, you finally make your way to the place where you will spend the largest and most significant part of your day, the scriptorium. This is arguably the monastery's pulsating intellectual heart, the place where human knowledge is preserved and multiplied letter by letter, a spacious and luminous room strategically located on the second floor of the cloister, positioned with architectural precision to receive the maximum amount of natural light from the rising sun through a series of tall, narrow windows facing precisely east. The room is both impressive and austere in its unornamented functionality. 6 tall, solid oak desks, technically called scriptoria or writing desks, are arranged in 2 parallel rows of 3, creating narrow aisles between them. Each desk has a surface inclined at a carefully calculated angle of approximately 40 degrees to facilitate writing and reduce strain on the back and neck during long hours of work, as well as built-in drawers underneath to store tools, materials, and works in progress. You have had your own permanent desk for 8 full years, your position earned through repeatedly demonstrated skill and proven patience in rigorous tests administered by the scriptorium master. The scent here is distinctive, unmistakable, as familiar as your own breath, a complex and stratified mixture of fresh parchment with a slightly animalic leather-like aroma, iron gall ink with its metallic and slightly acidic smell, pure beeswax used for sealing and protection, and the deep woody perfume of the tall oak cabinets where finished books and volumes in progress are carefully stored. It is an aroma you deeply associate with purpose, with the sacred work of preserving and multiplying human knowledge for generations yet unborn, for centuries yet unlived. Goose quills trimmed at a precise 60-degree angle, replaced daily because they quickly lose their sharpness and precision. The tip needs to be constantly resharpened throughout the day with a small, specialized knife with a curved, razor-sharp blade. Outer wing feathers are preferred for being stiffer and more durable. Iron gall ink, made from oak galls harvested in autumn. Iron sulfate bought from merchants. Gum arabic imported from the East to provide consistency, and red wine or vinegar as a solvent. Initial reddish-brown color that gradually darkens to deep black with exposure to air over days, becoming permanent and resistant to fading for centuries. Scribe's knife. Small forged steel blade with a polished bone handle, an essential multi-purpose tool for carefully scraping errors from parchment without making holes, sharpening quills dozens of times a day, smoothing and polishing the writing surface, and making small precision cuts when necessary. The blade is kept as sharp as a razor. You approach your designated desk and make a silent, deep bow before sitting down, not out of medieval superstition, but out of genuine and conscious respect. This is not just a piece of furniture or a work tool. This is your sacred instrument of service to God, the means by which you fulfill your monastic vocation. On the inclined surface lies the project you have been working on for 3 full months, a complete handwritten copy of St. Augustine's Confessions. The original exemplar, a precious 100-year-old manuscript borrowed under solemn oath from a neighboring monastery, rests on a special carved wooden stand to your left, protected by a clean cloth when not being consulted. Every word, every individual letter, every period and comma must be reproduced with absolute fidelity and perfect accuracy. The meticulous art of writing. The manuscript before you, growing page by page, already has 50 complete folios, each measuring approximately 20 centimeters wide by 30 high, the standard size for a codex of medium importance. The parchment was prepared for weeks by lay brothers specialized in this art. Sheep or young calf skins, treated with quicklime to remove hair, stretched on wooden frames under constant tension, meticulously scraped with curved blades to remove adipose tissue and epidermis, and finally polished with pumice stone until they were thin, flexible, translucent when held up to the light, and smooth as silk to the touch. The quality is exceptional. A smooth, uniform surface like fabric, consistent pale cream color without visible imperfections, holes, or remaining hairs that could interfere with the writing. Number 1. Quill preparation. You take a new, untouched goose quill from your tool drawer, selecting one from the right wing because you are right-handed. With your sharpened scribe's knife, you cut the tip at an angle of approximately 60 degrees, using a small block of hardwood as a base. Then make a precise small vertical cut exactly in the center of the tip to create 2 symmetrical tines that better hold the ink by surface tension and release the flow in a controlled manner. You test the quill on a piece of discarded parchment saved for this purpose, making several horizontal and vertical lines. The line must be thin, consistent in thickness, without smudges or failures. 2. Guideline verification. Before dipping the quill in ink and beginning the actual work, you carefully check the extremely thin and almost invisible lines marked with a dry point on the parchment using a metal ruler and a bone stylus. They precisely guide the height of the letters and the spacing between the lines with millimeter accuracy, ensuring perfect uniformity across the entire page and in the entire manuscript. These lines are almost invisible to the normal human eye, but your hands, trained for years, instantly feel them under the sensitive tip of the quill. 03. Immersion in the sacred text. You carefully dip the quill into the polished oxhorn inkwell, rotating it slightly to cover both sides evenly. The ink has a perfect consistency, neither too thick to clog the quill, nor too watery to smudge the parchment. You begin the first line of the day with the immortal words, Domine Deus noster inter confido, Lord our God, in you I trust. Each letter is formed with multiple deliberate and separate strokes, first the main vertical shafts, then the curves and arches, finally the decorative serifs at the top and bottom. The writing is Gothic textura quadrata, characterized by dense, strongly vertical, angular letters, almost architectural in their rigorous geometric regularity. The work of copying demands total, absolute, and unwavering concentration. Your eyes constantly move in an established rhythmic pattern between the original text on your left and your copy emerging under your hand, meticulously checking each word not once, not twice, but 3 consecutive times. A first time when looking at and reading the original, memorizing the sequence of letters, another while writing, translating memory into muscular movement, and a third after finishing the entire line, visually comparing your copy with the original to detect any error. No matter how small, errors are extremely rare after years of constant practice, but when they occur, they are potentially disastrous. Parchment is too expensive to waste lightly. Each sheet represents the complete hide of a young animal, plus weeks of intense preparation work by specialized artisans. A small error can be carefully scraped away with the knife blade, but it inevitably leaves a rough and visibly different area. Serious errors or multiple errors nearby mean losing the entire sheet, which can then only be used for drafts or practice. Time dissolved. Time dissolves completely when you are writing with total concentration. The light entering through the high windows gradually changes in angle and quality, slowly creeping across the opposite wall like a silent sundial as the unseen sun crosses the sky outside. You barely notice. Your entire consciousness narrows to a tiny point of absolute focus, the delicate tip of the quill touching the parchment, the next letter to form, the meditative and almost hypnotic rhythm of creation. There is something profoundly spiritual in this seemingly mechanical act. You are not just copying dead words from one page to another. You are allowing these meaning-laden words to pass through you, through your mind, through your heart, through your hand. When writing about Augustine confessing his youthful sins in Carthage, you inevitably reflect on your own sins, your own weaknesses. When copying his deep philosophical meditations on time and eternity, you necessarily contemplate your own mortality, the fact that you too are a temporal creature moving inexorably towards death. The work of copying becomes embodied prayer, philosophical thought transformed into physical and permanent form. He who writes sacred manuscripts enriches his own soul with every letter traced. Cassiodorus, 6th century monk, and scribe noon, break, and main meal. Around noon, as the sun reaches its zenith, and the light streaming through the scriptorium windows becomes more intense and vertical, the bell tolls for none, the midday prayer that divides the workday. You carefully place a thin strip of parchment between the pages to precisely mark your exact spot, meticulously clean your quill with a clean cloth kept for this purpose, and place it back in the drawer alongside your other organized tools. Your hands are inevitably stained with ferrogallic black ink on your fingertips and around your nails, permanent marks of the scribe's honor, impossible to completely remove even with vigorous washing. Your shoulders are tense and sore from bending over the desk for 4 continuous hours, and you feel a familiar, throbbing pain in your back as you stand and stretch. But there is deep satisfaction too, a sense of concrete accomplishment. You have completed 4 entire pages this morning, 4 pages that will exist for centuries after your death, that will be read by generations yet unborn, that perhaps will influence thoughts and souls you will never know. Hearty vegetable soup, prepared in a massive copper cauldron over a wood fire. Today it contains soft cooked brown lentils, chopped onions adding sweetness, cubed garden carrots, white turnips providing substance, sliced leeks, all grown by the monks themselves in the monastery's extensive fields and gardens, seasoned generously with dried herbs from last summer, thyme, rosemary, savory, which grow in protected beds. Fresh wheat bread, still slightly warm from the stone oven, unlike the dark rye bread of the morning. This one is made from finer wheat, has a light golden color and a softer, airier texture. It's a relative luxury, permitted only at the main meal. The crunchy crust crackles satisfyingly as you break it with your hands, releasing fragrant steam and the incomparable aroma of freshly baked bread. Aged hard cheese, produced at the monastery itself with milk from its cows and goats. Aged for 6 months in a cool, damp cellar, it has developed a hard orange-yellow rind and a dense, ivory-colored interior. So hard you need to slowly gnaw it with your back teeth, but it rewards with an intense, complex, salty and slightly spicy flavor. Garden apples, picked 2 weeks ago from the monastery's orchards, ancient varieties with forgotten names, small, sometimes with spots and imperfections, but sweet and crisp. stored in wicker baskets in a cool pantry where they will remain good until winter. Each monk receives a whole apple as dessert, a touch of natural sweetness in a predominantly austere diet. On important religious feast days, there would be fresh or salted fish brought from distant rivers and the sea. But the rule of Saint Benedict strictly prohibits meat from four-legged animals, pork, beef, lamb, for monks leading a contemplative life. This is reserved only for the sick in the infirmary or for the lay brothers who perform heavy physical labor in the fields. The soup is substantial, comforting, perfect for the cold October weather. You can identify each layered component flavor, the earthiness of the lentils, the soft sweetness of the caramelized onions, the firm texture of the carrots, the slightly bitter note of the turnips, all unified by the flavorful broth and aromatic herbs. As you methodically eat, you listen to the reading of the day. Today it's from the Golden Legend, compiled by Jacopo de Varazze, specifically the story of Saint Jerome, the great translator and scholar who lived in the 4th century. The irony does not escape you. Saint Jerome was himself a dedicated copyist, a scribe who spent decades of his life translating and preserving sacred texts, creating the Latin Vulgate, which is now the official Bible of the Church. You feel a profound connection across the centuries with this distant saint, united with him by the same essential task of preserving and multiplying sacred knowledge. The afternoon, manual labor and illuminations. After the substantial meal, there is a period specifically designated for physical manual labor. The rule of Saint Benedict is absolutely clear on this point. Monks should not only be scholars and intellectuals, but also practical workers with their hands, balancing contemplation with action, thought with doing. Ora et labora. Pray and work. The Benedictine motto perfectly summarizes this integrated philosophy of life. You descend the stone stairs to the cloister, the square courtyard at the exact center of the monastery, surrounded by 4 covered galleries with elegant arches. In the middle of the courtyard, there is a deep well of clean water, and around it, small raised beds and gardens of medicinal and useful herbs carefully cultivated. Today, your specific task is to care for the plants used to make inks, pigments, and dyes, essential resources for the scriptorium. You meticulously check the shrubs of Isatis tinctoria, the woad or dyer's pastel plant, whose green leaves, when processed, produce the deep, rich blue used for special illuminations. You examine the late-blooming saffron crocuses, their delicate purple petals protecting the precious red stigmas that, when dried and ground, will yield the intense golden yellow so valued by illuminators. You carefully remove invasive weeds around the madder plants, whose long red roots are harvested, dried, and ground to make a permanent red-orange pigment. You also check the marigold beds, whose yellow flowers produce a softer golden hue, and the elderberry plants, whose dark purple berries yield a temporary purple ink. This physical outdoor work is a necessary and welcome counterbalance to the endless hours of immobility in the scriptorium. Your muscles stretch and relax, your blood circulates more vigorously through your body, bringing fresh oxygen to tissues that have spent hours compressed in a static position. The October afternoon sun, already lower in the sky and losing its strength, pleasantly warms your shoulders, curved under the wool habit. You feel the cold, damp earth under your fingernails as you pull weeds, the green, living smell of the growing plants, the texture of the leaves under your fingers. For one precious hour, you are not an intellectual, a preserver of ancient knowledge, a guardian of sacred manuscripts. You are simply a man cultivating a garden, performing a task as old as humanity itself, as fundamental as Adam in the Garden of Eden before the fall. There is dignity in this simple work. There is connection to the earth and to countless generations of peasants and gardeners who have sustained civilization with their hands. Vespers, Compline, and the Great Silence. The bell solemnly rings for Vespers, the evening prayer that marks the transition between day and night. You carefully clean your precious brushes one by one in clean water, then in oil, ensuring no dry pigment ruins the delicate bristles. You hermetically seal the small pigment pots with wax lids to prevent them from drying out or being contaminated by dust. You reverently cover the manuscript with a clean white linen cloth to protect it from the nighttime humidity that will inevitably accumulate. On the way to the chapel, your hands still tremble slightly from the intense and prolonged concentration. Always trembling after hours of meticulous illumination work, the fine muscles protesting the effort of absolute control. Vespers, 6 p.m. In the chapel, now lit exclusively by flickering golden beeswax candles, you sing with your brothers as darkness settles completely outside the windows. The Vespers chants have a melancholic quality, different from those of the morning. There is deep gratitude in them, a respectful acknowledgement of the day completed, a gentle and deliberate detachment from daytime concerns and tasks. Te lucis ante terminum, before the end of daylight. The ancient words float in the incense-perfumed air, echoing through the cold stone vaults. Light supper. The last meal of the day is deliberately frugal. Day-old bread, already starting to harden, cheese, a mug of weak ale. Some older monks receive permission for a little wine, diluted with water for medicinal reasons. The reading is from the epistles of St. Paul, his dense and theological prose filling the silent refectory. Compline, 8 p.m. The last prayer of the day is perhaps the most beautiful of all, imbued with a profound and sacred stillness, a spiritual preparation for sleep. The chapel is in almost complete dimness, with only a few candles burning faintly on the distant altar. You sing the nocturnal psalms, asking for divine protection during the vulnerable and mysterious hours of the night when, it is believed, dark spiritual forces are most active. There is a specific verse that always deeply touches your heart during Compline, no matter how many thousands of times you have sung it. In manus tuas, Domine, commendo spiritum meum. Into your hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit. These are the last recorded words of Christ agonizing on the cross, and now, ritually repeated every night by monks throughout the Christian world, they become a small, voluntary, and symbolic death, a total and confident surrender to sleep and, through it, to the mysterious and unfathomable will of God. After Compline, the Great Silence officially begins. No monk may speak a single word until after Lauds the following morning. This is not just silence of voice, but silence of movement and action. You walk through the dark, cold corridors back to your cell with deliberately muffled steps, making no noise beyond the inevitable minimal rustle of your wool habit. The entire monastery transforms into a suspended, timeless space, as if time itself ceases to flow. Reflection in the darkness. In your narrow cell, you slowly undress from your heavy wool habit, folding it with automatic care and hanging it on the iron hook, leaving only the raw linen tunic that serves as sleepwear. You kneel briefly by the bed for a final personal prayer, not prescribed by the rule, your own words to God. You specifically give thanks for the continued health of the hands that are your working tools, for the clarity of vision without which you could not read or write, for the stability of mind necessary for prolonged concentration. You humbly ask forgiveness for inevitable moments of impatience during the day, for fleeting thoughts of pride regarding the exceptional quality of your work. You consciously remember that everything is for the glory of God, not your own. The sleep of the righteous and the eternity of manuscripts. You finally lie down, on the straw mattress that rustles and creaks under your weight, adjusting your body to find a minimally comfortable position among the hard stalks. You pull the rough, heavy wool blanket up to your chin, feeling its gradual warmth. The cold October night is already inexorably seeping through the thick stone walls, but you are used to it after 15 years. This cold is part of life, as normal as breathing. You can see absolutely nothing. The darkness is total, complete, dense, almost tangible, a physical presence, but you feel no fear. On the contrary, there is deep comfort in this familiar and predictable darkness. It is the same darkness every night, the same that enveloped the saints and martyrs, the same that invariably precedes the dawn. Your thoughts drift gently, without direction or urgency, fragments of the day mixing and dissolving into each other like ink in water. And so ends an ordinary day in the extraordinary life of a 13th century monk scribe, a day that will repeat tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, and all the following days as long as God grants you health and life. A life of rigorous and immutable routine, of profound silence and iron discipline, but also, and perhaps primarily, of deep purpose and transcendent meaning. Through your ink-stained hands, the precious knowledge of the ancients is preserved and multiplied. Greek philosophy, Christian theology, Roman history, Arab science, Latin poetry, everything passes through the patient fingers of monks like you and is carefully delivered to the uncertain future. You will not see this future. You will not know that your manuscripts will survive for centuries, will traverse wars and plagues, that they will be reverently studied by scholars of the coming Renaissance, that they will eventually be printed on mechanical presses not yet invented and distributed to millions of yet unborn readers. You don't know that you are building, brick by brick, letter by letter, the intellectual foundations of modern European civilization, preserving the intellectual heritage of antiquity through the obscure centuries of the early Middle Ages. All you know, as sleep finally claims you, gently carrying your consciousness away, is that you have faithfully done your work for one more day, that you gave your best, that you served God with the abilities you received. And that, for you, is completely sufficient. It is all that matters. It is all that has ever mattered. Good night, sleepy traveler. May your dreams be populated by golden letters and illuminated pages. Until the next journey through time, subscribe to the Sleepy Traveler channel for more immersive journeys through history. Like, comment, and turn on notifications. Share with those who appreciate stories that transport the soul.